the United States Supreme Court, they're going to hear a case that may allow states to illegally overturn an election and provide whatever results they choose for a presidential election and truly other elections by way of theory of this particular case. Let me bring your attention to this guy. Put up his picture. The US Supreme Court agreed on Thursday to hear a case that could dramatically change the way elections for Congress and the presidency are conducted by handing more power to the state, specifically to state legislatures, and blocking state courts from reviewing challenges to procedures and results. In other words, if the state legislature says it, it will become law and no oversight, no judge, the federal government, nobody can touch it. Put his picture up again. This is the guy who is actually bringing this suit. The case, an appeal from the North Carolina Republicans, challenges a state court ruling throwing out the congressional districts drawn by the North Carolina General Assembly that seemingly would have made GOP candidates likely victors in 10 of the state's 14 congressional districts. Republican North Carolina House Speaker Tim Moore, that man right there, is the plaintiff in the case. You got to pay attention to this because this is the next thing coming. The legislative maps were actually struck down by North Carolina's highest court because they subordinated traditional neutral redistricting criteria in favor of extreme partisan advantage. That was the quote from the ruling. For Republicans only, respondent Becky Harper was previously named plaintiff in the case of Harper versus Lewis, another state level case challenging gerrymandered maps in North Carolina. So the case deals with the Constitution's election clauses, all right, and revolves around competing interpretations of the power that the United States Constitution grants to legislatures in states, okay? So there are two relevant clauses here, and we're gonna examine them both. One is that the elections clause, which reads, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But this is it right here. Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. Now, if you remember, I've had many debates with conservatives who have said on this show that the federal government cannot get involved, it's unconstitutional for them to get involved in federal elections, that states have complete authority here. However, the Constitution says, but Congress can make laws that govern this very dynamic. So central to the case is what's called the independent state legislature doctrine. I want you to remember that because it's going to become part of the news cycle very soon. This is a constitutional interpretation that could be used by Republican-controlled states to hinder the true essence of a democratic process. So the independent state legislature doctrine, this theory is a reading of the Constitution pushed in recent years by a small group of advocates that will give state legislatures wide authority to gerrymander electoral maps and also pass voter suppression laws. It has even been used as political cover to try and overturn other elections. The Constitution delegates power to administer federal elections to the state, subject to congressional override. There is, however, a disagreement about how much power is delegated and to which state actors exactly. Proponents of the independent state legislature theory reject the traditional reading of the Constitution, insisting that these clauses give state legislatures exclusive and, as they say, near absolute power to regulate federal elections. The result, when it comes to federal elections, legislators would be free to violate the state constitution and state courts could not stop them from doing so. Are you hearing me? This is real. This is the next thing they're going to try to push, okay? Are Democrats being proactive? Have you heard about this from Biden yet? Has Vice President Harris talked about it? No, it's coming. There's more, right? The court's ruling could play a fundamental role in determining the outcome of the 2024 presidential election. Once again, it's not just about who counts the vote. It's not just about who casts them. It's about also who counts the vote, right? It's about both. So there's a Dean Amar from the University of Illinois College of Law, notes that a hypercharged version of the theory, pointing to the electors clause of the US Constitution, served as the backdrop for fake electors and that fake electoral scheme. That is the focus of the House Select Committee investigation, the January 6th attack on the US Capitol. Depending on how broadly the Supreme Court rules in the North Carolina redistricting case, the dean says support for the theory by the court could affect the 2024 presidential election. States with Republican-controlled legislatures could see it as an invitation to set new election rules that take power away from voters when picking electors for the Electoral College, or to make state lawmakers, not courts, the judges in disputes after the election. Now, I want you to think about if this law was already in place during the Trump administration. That means that every state that he told, I need your legislature to submit a different slate of electors, and I need you to overturn the election that showed I lost. All of those states, by way of judicial ruling from the US Supreme Court, would be able to do so legally. All right, Jeff, thoughts here.
Further reason why the term states' rights is problematic. This is going to reverberate, and we know every decision like this affects Black and brown and native people, especially Black, brown, native people who are poor. I was going to start off by saying that this story hits close to home because here in Ohio, the Republican legislature has defied overturned gerrymandered maps, but this is going to affect the rest of the country as well. But we are very well aware that these gerrymandered maps divide the will of the people, and in particular, Black people who have a voice and a vote to vote some of these people out. And when I say this, I'm looking at you, Representative Jim Jordan out of Northern Ohio.
Yeah, very well said. All right, very interesting stuff. Also dogmatically against what we believe is a democratic process. But once again, it has now become part of the mainstream. Trump's lies continue to make policies that work for those who are no longer even popular. Their ideas are no longer popular in America. But these lies now permeate not only through legislatures, but also through the United States Supreme Court. Interesting.